Hello and welcome to this short video on how to find and use information for a literature review. So this is an example of an abstract, and the reason I'm showing it to you is that it could save you a lot of time. So basically an abstract is a short summary of what an article is about or a piece of text is about. It includes the purpose, so why did the specific researcher or author undertake the research, what methodology, design, or approach they used in order to do their investigation, what did they find during the course of their investigation, were there any limitations or implications of the research, and also what is the study or the research contributing in terms of its originality or value. And then the author also assigns keywords to the research that identifies firstly what the research can be linked to or is about, and keywords that a user would most likely search for, and they would be able to also retrieve the specific article or paper as part of the results. And then lastly, as you can see there, it says paper type, it's a research paper. Something important is that with keywords, you need to have as few as possible. And the reason for that is that you want it to be focused when a person is searching. So limited to about 5 keywords if possible. And also select keywords that make sense if you are going to be writing an abstract, or if you will be reading an abstract, you might realize that one of the keywords that you used in your search are part of the keywords that the author has assigned to the paper, or are part of one or other element of the abstract. So to define a literature review, according to Wikipedia, a literature review is a text of a scholarly paper which includes the current knowledge, including substantiative findings, as well as theoretical and methodological contributions to a particular topic. Literature reviews are secondary sources, meaning no new information here. It's what has been written that you are looking at or reading and using, and do not report new or original experimental work. Remember, with your experimental work or findings, you need to report that after you've already written your literature review. So that is your originality or contribution to the knowledge base or to information on that specific topic. I used Wikipedia because I wanted a definition that is simple on what a literature review. So very important, if you will be using things like Wikipedia, you need to use them just to understand concepts or just to understand what you are dealing with. You do not necessarily have to use them in your assignment or your research paper. So just to continue, Card from 2010, he said, or she said, I'm not sure of the gender, this author said a literature review can include systematic synthesis of previous work around a particular topic. Systematic meaning it has to make sense how you write it. If possible, write it chronologically or using trends. So provide background information on the topic. So this is where the topic started. This is how it evolved. This is where it is now. Or this is how this concept started. This is how it evolved. And this is where we are now. So very important to note again, no new ideas are added in the literature review. So you do not add anything about your research in your literature review. You can identify a gap in the literature that exists that you want to address as part of your assignment or your paper or your research. That you can mention to say, so many studies exist on 1, 2, 3, but little has been explored or mentioned about whatever concept that you are dealing with. And then you need to also still substantiate the claim that you are making. So a good literature review needs to be comprehensive. At undergraduate level, it does not have to be exhaustive. If you are doing your PhD, you are expected to find as much as you can and try to be as exhaustive as possible. You need to be fair in the treatment of authors, so do not assume that you know all the authors within the field. If you do a keyword search, give every author a fair chance, read the abstract, see if it's relevant to you, and then save it if you want to use it, ignore it if you don't want to use it. But do not just disregard an author because, oh, they say name reads funny, or some other conclusions you might have made about the author. It provides a critical analysis for a concept or a theory or some type of topic that you are dealing with. It is not dated, meaning you are allowed to use dated sources or information. So you can use information from the 1950s, 1980s, but you need to also support that information with newer sources. So you can either say what existed 20 years ago or 30 years ago in the 90s or 80s is still true to this day, and then you include that source, the newer source as well as the older source. Or you can say this is where this concept started, you reference it, and then this is how it changed, you reference it, and this is how it's evolved to be where it is now, and then you reference it. So you might find that certain things stay the same, and if you find an older source, substantiate it with a newer one or support it with a newer one. Especially with background information, you cannot necessarily include only new sources because a background is something from the past, that provides context basically. You don't have to be confined to internet sources, meaning that you have to look at different types of information resources. So go through the UP library, look at books, look at journals, look at UP Space, look at the different databases and see if you can find information within them. A very good starting point is always your subject guide. Tips for a literature review. Like I said, start with textbooks so that you can get background information. Read review or overview articles. Find prominent scholars in the research area which can enrich the quality of your paper or enrich your paper. Because with let me put it this way, with different topics or different research areas, there are people who have become experts in that or have published a lot on a specific topic or area. And if you include those people, it shows that you've done your investigations and you have found the sources that most people are citing and are using as the foundation of their research or something like that. You need to also organize the chapter or document thematically. So if you're writing a thesis or dissertation, you will use chapters. If you're writing an assignment or a research report, it will be in sections. So what is common here is that you would then have to write an introduction in your literature review part. Remember, with every section that you write, you have to briefly introduce what you will be doing. And then if there are any concepts that need to be defined, you need to define the concepts. Do not assume that because it's in a specific discipline, everybody will know what those concepts mean. Write your definitions in the context of how you will be dealing with them. And then you start your discussion with, let's say, part of the topic. So part A and then part B, and then you combine the two, and then you have your discussion, and then you write your conclusion. If you can and you have the time, you can create a script file, basically where you write down ideas and If you find references that you want to use, you can add into your scrap file with the facts that you find from those specific sources. You also need to find different material, like I said, so find articles, find conference papers, find websites, so those can be industry-related websites or author websites as well. Read abstracts. They save you a lot of time. I can never say this enough. Rename your articles that you download using the title or keywords. So you can have, for instance, the author's surname, and then you have the year in which the article was published and maybe the first 3 words of the title of the article or the concepts in which they refer to or relate to. Then if you can, and if you have time and you plan accordingly, you can write up summaries or ideas as you read and then provide citations and references. So if you are using EndNote, which is a reference management tool, it will make the process a lot easier for you. Also, use bridging text. Bridging text helps your paper to read like a story, so there's no breaks between what you are stating in your document. We need to know, what did we just read? What are we about to read? And as I mentioned previously, you need to identify a gap in literature versus what you want to research. So if literature hasn't explored whatever concept and it's what you want to research, then you need to identify it and state that this is the gap and this is what I want to do in terms of it. So this is an example of integrating sources. So you can see there I've stated what the first author has said, what the second author has said, and then I said for this research, this is what the specific concept is. Here's another example. So if this different authors are stating something similar or the same, you can state that fact and then name all the authors that relate to that fact. Bridging text examples. So you can either do it at the beginning or at the end or both, depending on how much you want to write. So you can start the chapter or the section by saying, in this specific section or in this chapter, I will be discussing 1, 2, 3. Once you are done, then you say, as discussed above, we did 1, 2, 3, and in the next section, we'll be discussing 1, 2, 3. Or you can just say, in order to address 1, 2, 3, we will need to do 1, 2, 3, which will be done in the next section or in the next chapter. So that is it for finding and using information for literature review. I hope you find the tips and information provided here useful to you. Thank you.